Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Healing Vibrations. And my name is Gina Dallison, and today I am really excited to be joined by Sarina Mann. And Sarina is a presentation coach and creator of breakthrough public speaking. So if you're a business owner and want some help with confidence speaking on camera, Sarina is your lady. But Sarina doesn't just have that as a story, of course not. She is also living with and has worked her way through the debilitating symptoms of ME, which is chronic fatigue syndrome. So Sarina, thank you so much for joining us today and coming here and sharing some of your story. And of course, this podcast is all around seeing illness as a gift and changing perspective. And yeah, so tell us something about your story and what's the gift that you found in your illness.
Sure. Thanks, Gina. Thanks very much for having me on this show. It's honestly such a breath of fresh air to even contemplate the thought of an illness being something like a gift. And I think it's very uncommon, but I think it's something that can make you really grow as a person. And that's what I've experienced. I think there are also phases to being unwell. When you first become unwell, I think it's a shock, and
Doesn't feel like
you're
a
not
gift then,
thinking
does it?
no, it doesn't feel like a gift at all. You're just thinking, what? This is awful. When will it all be over? And then it takes a while especially if it's a chronic illness where it's going on, you get to a point where you have a choice. Am I going to be cross with it, be angry, be bitter that my life has ended up in this way, feel sorry for myself? Or am I going to make a more positive choice and live with it, accept it, and even embrace it? Which is
Yes.
what I view as seeing it as a gift and seeing that it can bring something positive to your life. And in fact, something that was missing before even.
Oh, I
So I
like
think
that. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's very much a journey and everyone will be different. But for me, it was definitely a process, and so it's been 12 years. So it was a long journey
Wow.
going through different types of phases. But now I very much see it, upon reflection, and of course, I'm much better than I was. So I've been improving. But now I do see it very much as a gift, something that's benefited me because I've been able to reflect more and to create some qualities within my mind that are hugely beneficial.
Yeah. So thank you. And I think similarly, to be honest with you, it is that learning more about yourself. And that's certainly been my experience. So what particularly then did you sort of find out about? What sort of well, maybe start off or tell us a little bit about when the symptoms first happened to you. What state were you in? How did it
Sure,
first
yeah.
show itself to you?
Thanks. Yeah, because actually it was very different then to how things are now with my illness. So initially I was actually taken to A&E back in 2010, and I just couldn't move. So I was in hospital for a couple of days. They were trying to work out what was wrong. They did some medical tests, and they said I had a post-viral syndrome. So it's a syndrome that you get after having a virus, and that was that. And I said, okay, well,
Basically, I'd heard from somebody that a syndrome is basically doctor speak, but they haven't got a clue.
yes. Exactly. Yes. So post-viral syndrome. Okay. And will it go? Will I be better by next week, let's say? And it was just such a shock that I was that debilitated that I could hardly walk. I became breathless after just a few steps.
Wow.
So in the end, really, if I wanted to get about, I had to use a wheelchair for the first almost 2 years. I was bedbound, mostly bedbound. I could get up temporarily to go to the toilet or get some food, but that was really it. So
Oh
my
my
life was
God,
very
well, that must
much
have been
just.
terrifying.
It's interesting because at some point someone asked me, "How are you coping right now?" Because it's an interesting illness where people don't know the cause, the cure, or when you'll be better. So you go to the doctor and you say, "Okay, I've got this illness now." Oh, by the way, so going back a step, after you have post-viral syndrome for a few weeks, they say if it continues, they name it ME. I don't tend to use the word chronic fatigue because I think that term chronic fatigue doesn't describe what's going on. because you're not in a wheelchair because you're tired.
No,
You're in
yeah,
a wheelchair.
fatigue's a bit of a strange word, isn't it, to
It
use?
is, and I do disagree with that label. So I don't tend to call it that. I understand that this is what it's labeled for
Hmm.
some, but also ME is another word for it, another term for it. So I tend to use that one just because that term fatigue seems to imply you're too tired to get out of bed right now. You're too tired to walk. That's what's going on, and that is really not
Which is,
not what's going on. And anyone who has that knows, okay, no, this is not. We're not talking about
we're not
tiredness
talking.
here.
We've had a heavy night or something like that. This
Yes,
is
exactly. This is not about that.
this is a severe debilitation, isn't it?
Yes, you're very unwell. I mean, I
Yeah.
had problems breathing, I had problems, a lot of discomfort in my chest. It was hard to take just a few steps. I also lost my voice. It was difficult to read or to write. And even my cognitive ability, it just challenged every part of me.
Hmm.
And that's not feeling a bit drowsy. That is not
No,
what that
that is
is.
like, yeah, your
Yeah.
body's
And so
almost shutting down, isn't it?
correct. It really does. And in fact, when I went to an ME clinic, that's exactly what they said, that ME is a multi-system illness where loads of different aspects and parts of your system isn't working. Your digestive system, your endocrine system, just so many different things are just not working at the same time. And
Yeah.
that's what creates ME. And that made sense to me. Okay, this makes sense. But initially, when you go to see, your doctor, this is what happened to me anyway. I said, what's the cause of this? And they said, well, we don't know. How long will it last? I don't know. What can I do about it? We don't know. Is there anything I can do? We don't know.
Wow.
and and that was then your anxiety starts to rise because you think, oh my goodness, what's going on? And I remember when someone asked me at some point during this first 2 years, how are you coping from day to day with this, because you don't know, will you get better, is it going to be something that will last forever, what will happen, just the coping with that uncertainty. And the truth is that you don't actually think of the big picture at that time. You actually think, how am I
Just
going to get to the bathroom today?
just the
That's what
day
you're
to
thinking.
day, actually
Yes,
moving forward each
really.
day. Yeah.
That's right. Can I get my breakfast, or am I too unwell? How, and
Wow.
because that becomes such a massive issue, you need to try to work out how you're going to do these things. So you're not actually thinking too much about, oh my goodness, what does this
What am I
mean
going
for
to
my
be?
life, my career? Yeah. You're actually just thinking, I need to get out of bed somehow today and function and get some food or whatever.
So
So
do
that's how
you?
it
Sorry to interrupt. I was just thinking. Do you think it was almost helpful them not knowing? Because if they're giving you a prognosis, this is going to be a lifelong thing, or this is going to last for 10 years, or then that might have given you a. Whereas actually,
yes,
the
well,
not
that's
knowing almost gives you hope, doesn't it? It could just end
yeah, I
tomorrow.
think that's a good point. It did. So it did give me a terrible fear of sort of uncertainty. But at the same time, if I reflect back now and think, if they'd said, look, it's likely you'll never get better, you just won't be able to move ever again, then that would have been very, very depressing. Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. And in fact, I did do some research, and most cases of ME did show people overall got better. That not necessarily a complete recovery, but that you wouldn't be sort of bedbound forever at that
Yes.
level of ME, but that you could get better, and that did give me hope. And I always felt that I would get better. I always felt, for whatever reason, in my mind, I just thought, okay, this is going to just be temporary, and I'll be better soon. I always had that in mind, and
Great.
it
Yeah.
never happened. It wasn't soon. This was just 12 years now. And it
Wow.
was a very, very gradual process of recovery where you realize, oh, I can stand for a minute now, and then the next day you can only stand for 30 seconds. You're like, oh no. And
So
and
it's
then it
not
goes
like a
on.
nice sort of constant upward. It's more like a pew, 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 pew,
Oh
pew, pew, pew,
yes,
pew.
absolutely. And then you,
Yeah.
you you try, because you so desperately do want it to get better and be as normal as possible. You try to do more than you're capable of, and you think, okay, no, I'm sure I can just, go to the shops or something, and then you set yourself back, and then you're in bed for a long time again, and it's unbelievable, because I think it's not many people really talk about this level of illness, and I didn't even know this type of illness existed. I used to be a very active person. In my 20s, I was training in 4 different types of martial arts. I was ever so, physically really, really
Yeah.
active. And I'd never heard of such a thing, that this could ever happen, that you could get a mysterious illness that no one can identify, and that would just be so debilitating, and it would um, affect your mobility so severely. But to
No,
answer your
that's
question, yes, I think because there wasn't anyone saying this is going to be the end of your mobility forever, of course, then that did give me hope. And I did always have that, actually. I just always felt that at some point I would be better. I just always felt it would be much quicker than it has been.
so. So how did you sort of go from that barely being able to move to, because now I'm looking at you and can't see there's anything wrong with you. You look amazing. You whenever I speak to you, Sarina, your energy is fantastic. But I know that that's like you do a lot of stuff behind the scenes to manage that. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was a really, really gradual journey. And I think it's just a process you go through. There's nothing like this whole experience of just being in bed long term and just not seeing anyone. It's just the
Wow.
most unusual scenario that, of course, many people face when they're very unwell or when they're elderly and so on. But when you're young, because I was 31, it was just such an unusual phenomenon, just to be there in this state every day. And I think you just go through a process. So I think it was really hard at first, just that sort of day-to-day existence. But then I think you have to reach a real low in your mind where you think, oh my goodness, this is really awful. But how do I want to respond to it, and what am I going to learn from it? So I think it was a very, very gradual process, and because I use Buddhist meditation to help me, then I felt this was an opportunity for me to use those meditations more, go more deeply into my meditation, and benefit from it in that way, and see it as a training of my mind, and challenge myself to keep a relatively happy, peaceful mind despite those conditions. But then you just go through a very, very gradual recovery. As I said, for me, it's been 12 years. And so I was at a point where I could move about, but then I'd have to, let's say, rest again, or then I could get out for maybe an hour or so and then come back. So it's just very, very gradual, and you have to be just very patient with yourself and understanding with yourself, and also not worrying about what people are thinking, because even when I was quite unwell, I did look very well. I did look very well. And so it's deceptive, as we all know,
Yeah,
we
they're
don't
hidden
really know.
hidden illnesses, aren't they?
Yes, it's a hidden illness.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you just can't tell. And I think that's certainly part of what I've learned on my journey is you don't know what's behind somebody's facade and smiley face, and or even grumpy face, if they've come up or they have slammed the door in your face or they've cut you up in traffic. It's like you do not know what is going on in their world. So I'm a lot more forgiving, I think, to
Oh,
everybody
yes.
and myself.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, actually. And I think that's what illness does teach you, to be kinder, to be more gentle on yourself and others, because you understand. I think for me, definitely one of the gifts this illness has given me is that it's increased my empathy and my compassion, for sure. Because when I thought in that moment, wow, this is how it feels like to be really unwell, and just to be on your own the whole time. And of course, you can have visitors, but let's say even if you get one person, drop in and see you once a day for an hour, that's still sort of 23 hours a day you're on your own.
Yeah.
It's still a huge amount of time where you have to find those inner resources to feel positive. And then when you think of all the other people in the world who are in similar situations for whatever reason, there are so many people who are unwell. And then you kind of open your heart more to others, and you realize, gosh, you're not the only one. It can see, if you just compare yourself to you and your family members and your friends, of course, then you're the only one, and that can feel awful because you feel very isolated, and you can think, oh gosh, everyone else is just getting on with their lives, and look at me, everything's ended for me. But when you just open out your thinking and think about, the entire world and all the people in the world who have difficulties with their health, then you feel less anxious yourself about your own illness, and you feel more relaxed. You open your heart more to others and the whole experience, that actually this is okay. I can manage this. And I think by having that openness of mind and thinking about everyone in this situation, it does actually it does help.
And I think I've done a little bit of research, and trying to find the figures are quite difficult. But with these chronic illnesses, that they're reckoning that by the time we reach 50 now, that 1 in 8 of us, probably more than that, has been living with some sort of chronic illness. So whether that's ME or MS, autoimmune, or cancer, or IBS, there's a lot, isn't there? So actually, the chances of, especially when we get a little bit older, of actually having something that we've got to live with day by day and manage and adjust to, is not, I want to scare the world, but it's it's facts, it's out there. And I think there is,
Yes.
and that's part of what I want to be doing on this broadcast, is actually suggesting there is a different way. So are you taking any medication or anything currently for?
No, not really. I mean, I used to go on all kinds of special diets, and I did take various supplements and so on initially. But now, really, I just try to have a healthy diet. But I don't take any kind of medication, and I use my meditation, if anything, to really help me to create positive feelings and thoughts within my mind. That's really helpful. But I think it's what you said is, it's a fantastic point, about this 1 in 8 statistic. That's incredible. And it's seeing that, I think it just shows that there are so many people out there living with these different chronic conditions who don't really want to say, because there are so many reasons. If you're working, you don't want to lose your job, so you want to keep it secret. And that can be hugely stressful, because you have to keep your symptoms secret. You have to keep your illness secret. Or else if you're running a business, you might think, oh no, I best not let anyone know about this. It could be bad for my business and so on. Whereas in reality, it's about focusing on what you can do, and you can do your skills well. So focus on this. So there are ways of managing your situation, and getting the support that you need in order to function and do well in what you do. And personally, I think these last couple of years has shown us, it's obviously been a devastating time for people worldwide with COVID, but it's always good to think about, what kind of silver lining is there in this in this cloud. And I think the silver lining in these last 2 years has been that, because there's now much more open-mindedness about the power of being virtual and the advantages that this can bring. I personally feel the world is now open for business for people with chronic illnesses and disabilities, that we too can come along. I mean, I remember, being invited to lots of different networking events, so be here at 7 a.m. for a breakfast meeting. It's like, okay, well, I can't actually physically do that. And it just felt like, goodness, how can I be part of the business world? Whereas now, of course, I'm part of lots of different networking groups.
Yeah, it does make a big difference.
Yes, absolutely. Or giving talks. I mean, it's brilliant. Where now my mobility is much better. I can actually get out more anyway. So I am doing a mixture of some in-person training as well as online. But I certainly couldn't do everything in person. So now I can have that mix, and that works really well. So I think it's about finding something that works well for you. And seeing that now there are huge opportunities. There really are.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you can't walk very well, because actually all we're seeing, we're sitting on the chair. And I agree. I did go to a live networking meeting yesterday, which was the first one for ages, and it was nice. But yeah, it was a lot of effort and also a lot of time. So it's quite nice to do things online. I do enjoy them, although there is something nice about actually shaking somebody's hand and actually looking them in the eye rather than in the camera.
Absolutely. I personally like.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I personally like a good mixture, because
Yes,
you're right. There is something really special about being there in person, and I think it's nice to have the balance, and especially if you do struggle with mobility or overall ill health, then even just knowing that half your time you can spend online, the other half you can go out. You can just have different variations of how you spend your time. It puts yourself under much less pressure if you feel you don't have to be going out each day. So there's so much more potential. But I personally love the virtual world as well, and I think you can just meet so many different people
it's
and
great, isn't
develop
it?
some amazing connections. I've met so many amazing friends, colleagues, and so on just through the virtual world.
Yeah, it is incredible. So tell us a bit about your business journey then, because 12 years ago you could barely get out of bed, and now you're a business owner, and you're thriving, and you're really helping people get confident on camera. And I know what a fantastic speaker you are. So yeah, tell us more about that journey.
Yeah, so it's interesting because when you're recovering from illness, there are so many different things that are going on in your mind. Of course, you lose a lot of your confidence because you've been out of work and you're not sure what you can manage with your health. So I just focused on brainstorming. So what ideas could I have? So I initially I had a background in research, so I was a research assistant. And my degree was in international relations. I did my master's and my research degree in international politics. So this was my background, and then I spent some time I worked as a tutor at the university as well, tutoring in undergraduate politics. And then I worked for a charity, and I did a management role in the charity. And then I became unwell. So I really had to think about what skills that I had, what could I use. And I remember that I really enjoyed tutoring and teaching, this kind of thing. And so I looked at a range of options, and I just narrowed it down to a few. And I ended up doing a few courses, some of which I could do, some of which just didn't work for me. It was just too much energy, too much concentration required. What I did realize is that I could teach. Okay, so I did my TEFL qualification, which is teaching English as a foreign language. I did a few different types, because I wanted to train people for what's called the IELTS exam. IELTS is an English speaking exam, English test that people have to do when they're moving to an English speaking country.
Okay.
So I helped prepare people for this exam. So I worked as a tutor, and the first step was really thinking, well, what can I do? And as soon as I was able to sit in a chair, speak, and think properly for an hour, I felt I can work.
Wow.
And that took a few years. So it took a few years to be able to get there. And I realized I could do this. I could tutor in English. And so that's what I did. I used to tutor kids in China and adults who wanted to learn English as a foreign language. And I helped prepare people for the IELTS exam. So I was working as a tutor. And then I started tutoring in GCSE English language as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did this for quite a few years, and I did it. It was a mixture. Initially, it was just online, and then I started traveling. In particular, the GCSE English language tuition. I traveled because I could. Let's say if I was driving, sort of whatever, 15 minutes either side, and then the tuition for 1 hour. So it was working out the timings of everything. If I had 2 hours of energy, could I do this? And for me, then those were successes.
Yeah.
Just in 1 week, if I could just go out and tutor just one student for that 1 hour, then that was a huge thing. I tried
Wow.
other things. I
Okay.
mean, initially I thought it would be great to train as a counselor or a therapist, but after 2 years, then in reality, the training was looking quite hard going. Sort of 2 days a week, full time. Plus, I'd have to
Right.
keep working, and I realized with the chronic condition
Yeah.
that wouldn't be possible. And also, I had a feeling of more being a coach rather than a counselor. That was my feeling inside. That's what I wanted to do. And that's when I got into Toastmasters, developed myself as a speaker, and seemed to do quite well in Toastmasters and in particular contest. And that was brilliant. And that's when I realized, wow, actually, the tuition I was doing more to just find something that I could do, but actually I was really passionate about speaking. And I knew I could coach people online and so on. So I thought, okay, this is really what I wanted to do. But then it's been a very gradual process, because there's lots of other things involved too,
Oh
running a
yes.
business, as you know, as we all know. So it's about learning new skills, but also pacing myself through it, and not wanting to do things in a rush and not wanting to push myself. It's just, trying to enjoy the journey and working at a pace that works well, within what you can do. So yeah, that's overall been my journey. It's just been a slow one, but I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. I mean, it wouldn't have worked if I just tried to sort of force myself into something very quickly.
Well, I think that's it, isn't it? And certainly I'm learning this as well, that whole sort of balancing act between where you want to be going and what you want to be doing compared to the reality and acceptance of actually what your body is saying right now, and
Yes.
getting in touch. And for me particularly, I've recognized that for the last 50 years I've pretty much ignored my body. Haven't really taken much notice of it. It's worked pretty well up until the last sort of 10 or 15, and now it's that building up a relationship with it again and saying, hey body, I'm listening. If you need a rest, then I will rest, rather than charging on through and carrying on regardless and pepping myself up with coffee or whatever it is that I
Yeah.
feel will help.
That's a great point, and I was very much the same. Just sort of used my body to do whatever, to overwork or stress myself or whatever. But
Mm.
now, of course, I can't do that. So it's a teacher. The illness is very much a teacher, because
Oh,
it
that's
means that I
nice. I
can't
like
actually do
that.
that. I have to be sensible all the time. Whereas before I
Yeah,
could just didn't think about my body at all. Stay up late, get up early in the morning, work 7 days a week if I wanted to, train all these different types of martial arts without a thought of my
that
health or my
actually.
body or my energy. Whereas now I actually have to be very well organized to do the things that I'm doing.
And
And listen,
prioritize what's
yeah,
important. Yeah.
prioritize. Yes. And so it's and I think you're also much more resourceful when you've got less energy. You have to work smarter, not harder, because you
Yes.
can't do an 18-hour long day. That's just not
Yeah.
possible. So how can I work smarter rather than harder?
Yeah.
And
I like
how
that.
can I be more resourceful?
Yeah, that's really cool. And I also think that having an illness like this that literally slows you down is it teaches you to be more mindful. So
Yes.
even because my balance is a little bit off, if I'm standing up, if I'm not mindful when I'm standing up, I can be falling over. So it is that like mindful practice, which and this is something that you've done. So you mentioned your sort of your faith as a Buddhist and your meditation practice. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I always like to end with a bit of a meditation or
Yeah,
mindful practice,
great.
as you know. So that will lead us on quite nicely to maybe sharing something that can work for our audience.
Yes, sure. Thanks. There are just so many meditations and practices
Mm.
and prayers that I did to support me and that I still do. And yeah, there are just so many. But I think initially what I was doing was actually just simplifying everything and just really getting in touch with a sense of inner peace through breathing meditation. So something very simple, not something that I had to think about too much or conceptualize, just really focusing on the breath, which then helps you to bring yourself in the present moment, and work out. It helps you to work out all the complexities of your thinking because it stops the thinking. There's something I say in my coaching is that when I'm helping people to overcome anxiety, is that you can't think your way out of anxiety because anxiety is a problem of overthinking. Okay, so
Ah,
if someone's about to give a talk and they're like, a lot of advice is, you just tell yourself you're the best, you're great, you can do this. I don't really think that works so much. I think it's about just focusing on the present moment, calming your system down, and then all those other anxious thoughts will reduce. So if you've got all these anxious thoughts and then you just tell yourself, no, I'm
you're
fine, I'm the
almost got a
best.
shouting match, haven't you, going on inside your head?
Exactly. There's this like inner war raging on inside you. And of course, you're going to feel more stressed and more anxious when you're delivering that talk or whatever you're going to do. So it's really about just stripping things down to basics. And instead of having this war of different ideas, just acknowledging how you feel and then doing some basic breathing exercises. And then that will calm down the anxiety and the nerves anyway and all those thoughts. So that's really what's helped me to not be so trapped in all the overthinking or the inner turmoil or the inner conflict that's going on, telling me I should be like this, but I'm over here. And for me, breathing meditation is such a simple practice that anyone can do, with any faith or no faith. It doesn't matter. It's just about reconnecting with your peace. And I think when we feel peaceful, everything else just works out so much better in our lives. And especially when you've got an illness, because often your life just can be that much harder.
Oh
We're
yeah.
all at different levels of illness, and if sometimes things can just be so hard. You just need a way to feel better inside, just to feel a way to feel more peace inside. And I think this is just such a simple practice, just a basic breathing meditation.
So maybe you can take us through one of those in a second. But before we go on to that, I just wanted to go back to where you said, when you've got these feelings, acknowledge your feelings, because that is something that I am practicing with, really. So can you tell us how sort of you go about acknowledging your feelings? What does that sort of process look like to you?
Yes, sure. So I think the first thing that happens is I notice that I'm running away from feelings. And for me, again, the illness was teaching me this, that I was on the run from my
Wow, yeah.
negative feelings. Anything that I wanted to not think about, I just sort of repressed or whatever. So then there was a tension about me, and that was really fueling why I was doing so many of the things in my life. And so first I had to notice that this was happening, that there's some refusal to want to feel unpleasant feelings. And I think that's the foundation of so many of our distractions, why we drink or why we find entertainment or we want to keep busy the whole time. It's so we don't have to think about the things that we feel are unpleasant. But I think with the illness, you have no choice, because you can't go out drinking, you can't go out with friends.
It's just stopping you and forcing you.
Yeah. So you're
Yeah.
just lying there going, oh, okay. I couldn't even watch a screen or anything on my phone. I couldn't watch
Couldn't
anything.
concentrate, no.
No, it would make me feel quite unwell. So it was literally just sort of lying there. And so that forced me to really look at my mind and acknowledge those feelings. And sometimes I really wouldn't want to, because sometimes those feelings could be unpleasant, whether it's you're irritated or you're angry about something. And there's such an idea, I think, in our society where anger is such a bad emotion that you mustn't ever sort of admit that you're angry, or you can call it stress even, and just term it in a different way. But from my perspective, anger is a natural emotion. I don't think it's good to go around therefore expressing it. I'm not saying that, but just within your own mind, acknowledge it and work through it. So it's first of all seeing that there's something to be acknowledged, and
Mm-hmm.
and you'll see it because maybe you're whatever drinking too much or keeping yourself busy. There's something in your
Yeah,
behavior
there'll be
that's
some
showing
sort
that.
of activity or behavior that maybe is not
Yes.
helping you.
Yes, or that you notice as soon as you sit down and you have nothing to do, you feel agitated and you can't bear it. Okay, so I think I needed to start to notice that first. Then I had to think to myself, really, and this is what I learned in meditation, that those thoughts don't have the power to um, destroy my mind. This is what I learned from one of the books by my teacher, Geshe Kelsang Gyatso, who talks about this and how to solve our human problems, which is about acknowledging those feelings and understanding that these feelings don't have power to just destroy my mind, that actually it's not the end of the world. They're just some momentary unpleasant feelings. So I think it's about having that approach, seeing that, okay, these are all this is right now are some temporary unpleasant feelings. I can deal with this. I can.
Well,
So
this is it,
so
because emotions, it's energy, emotions, and they're meant to move through your body. And my teachers are telling me that actually, if you allow the emotions to actually be whatever they be, 90 seconds and they've moved on. They don't sit there for very long. They don't fester in your mind or
yes,
your stomach or wherever it might be feeling in you.
absolutely. It's if we repress them or don't acknowledge them, then they are there forever.
Yeah, but if
But
it
if
actually
we
allow them to, I think it is getting curious rather than that, "Oh, it's going to
yes,
be horrible. Let's just,
yeah,
okay, what have you got to
be
say then?"
curious. Just
Yeah.
be curious. Acknowledge. Oh, look, it's some inner rage going on there, or whatever. We acknowledge it and we're curious about it and we sort of observe it. Um, And again, in the meditations that I've studied, there's the idea of just seeing that those unpleasant feelings are like a cloud in the sky, that your mind is the nature of the sky, and those thoughts are like clouds. And if you don't follow them, then they'll pass. And
Wow,
that's, for
yeah,
me, is
that's
very
nice.
comforting. I practice that meditation, and it allows you just to see what's going on for what it is, which are some temporary unpleasant feelings. If you don't follow them, they will pass. And I think that that was the key for me, and that's what I mean by acknowledging them. So you're instead of sort of just denying them, pushing them away, repressing them, you're just creating space in your mind, let's say through a breathing meditation, and then allowing those feelings to arise, and keeping the mind relatively calm with that breathing meditation. I find meditation, such as meditating on the breath, is a nice time to bring in those feelings that you don't want to acknowledge, because then you can do it just in that safe space when you're feeling pretty calm. And then you can do something like breathing it away, breathing those unpleasant feelings
So can you
away.
talk us through like a brief sort of bit of breath work now? We've got a couple more minutes to
Yes, sure.
maybe share.
Yep. Yeah. So generally, the meditations that I've practiced are basically breathe. For instance, I mean, there are lots of different types, but one of the ones I find most powerful is just breathing out the negative feelings or illnesses, any mental or physical pain, illness, worry. Imagine breathing them away, and then breathing in a more positive, sort of pure light that uplifts your body and mind. That's the kind of thing that I would practice.
Mm. And
I mean,
actually,
I've
just doing that. So if you just, yeah, use your imagination for good, because I think sometimes we can get so caught up in the worry and stress of what could happen. Use our imagination for what could happen, and actually
yes,
let's breathe in all that health and love and vitality and peace, I guess,
yes.
and then just let go of anything else that's, yeah, the negative feelings or those bad thoughts. I was going to say bad thoughts. I don't really want to judge my thoughts as good or bad, but
Yep.
the thoughts that are not helping me move forward to where I want to be going, because we do have different thoughts in our head. Some of them are very helpful and empowering, and some of them not so much. So it's
Exactly. Yes, beautifully said. And I love that about imagination too, because we do use our imagination for all kinds of awful things, imagining worst case scenario or catastrophic thinking. Whereas why not use the power of our imagination for something really positive?
yeah, and that gives, and then even just at the couple of breaths that I did then when we were talking, it definitely makes you feel better.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
And
For
then when you
sure.
start feeling better, you start seeing the world through a bit of a different set of eyes. And, it's not all bleak and grim out there.
No. And you
It's
really need that, especially when you're unwell. You do need that fresh approach each day,
mm,
because often people you're on their own, things are a struggle, and there needs to be a way to access those inner resources to make each day better and even enjoyable, and joyful, so that you can be
yeah,
creative and resourceful. But when it's hard to find that peace, then it's really hard to find any kind of resourcefulness or joy, because it all seems so difficult.
yeah, that's really helpful. So we're just as we're coming to an end now, a couple of things. If anybody wants to know more about you and your work, where I will put some links in all the comments on our social media things underneath, but where would be the best place to get hold of you or find you?
Sure, I'm mostly on LinkedIn, so
Hmm.
I'll send you I think I've sent you
Yeah, I've got the links
my
to it.
link.
So hmm.
But also there's my website, which is breakthroughpublicspeaking.com. But the social media platform I use the most at the moment is LinkedIn.
Cool.
Um, but I've got a YouTube channel I've just started, and yes, I'll be starting Instagram soon. But LinkedIn is the best place to
Yes,
find
ma'am.
me.
Excellent, excellent. And what would you say, after following our conversation, what do you think the sort of three main points are that we could leave our audience with after our discussion today?
Okay. So I think if I were to summarize things in 3 points, the first one is that when you first become unwell, it's really natural and normal to feel awful and shocked. your period of grief and why me? What on earth? Confused. But be patient with yourself because things will get better.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily physically, but mentally, if you allow yourself to go on a journey. And the second thing is to allow yourself to go on a journey.
Yeah,
To
yeah. Allow
allow
that
yourself
journey.
to feel positive and to celebrate what you are doing. And lastly, to focus on to continue on that last point to just to focus on what you can do and not what you can't, and use the power of your imagination to completely focus on what's possible rather than what's impossible.
Oh yes, yeah, the power of imagination to focus on for what's possible, but also what you want. And I think sometimes we can get so caught up in what we think we're stuck with, then actually just start having a play with actually what would you really like in this situation? What would you like to happen today? So I think that's really powerful. So thank you so much, Sarina. So this is Sarina Mann from what is it, Breakthrough Public Speaking. Yes, and
yes, thank you very much for having me on the show. I've really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for